Human rights groups are calling on the U.S. president to deliver on his promise made more than 4 years ago and shut down the notorious Guantanamo Bay detention facility. But Barack Obama recently authorized the military to keep holding terror suspects there without charge or trial, as Gitmo remains in business 11 years since it was open. Let's now get some reaction from activist Aisha Maniar, who's been campaigning for the closure of Guantanamo. Ms. Maniar, what's Washington's reasoning for ruling to keep the facility open, and how's the move being received?
We understand that the American government, within the Congress and the Senate, there's two different parties, and the parties keep arguing over Guantanamo Bay, whether it should be shut down, whether it should be kept open. A lot of that is really just false rhetoric just to keep the prison open. The Guantanamo Bay, after 11 years, has got immense symbolic power, and all the things that it represents to human rights campaigners, people who believe in truth, justice, and the rule of law. It represents injustice. But for the Americans, it gives them a raison d'etre, it gives them a system within which, an extra legal system within which they can continue their illegal detention, arbitrary detention, torture, drone attacks, all the other bits of the parcel that we've seen over the past 11 years from the American administration.
So with the so-called war on terror ongoing, the U.S. is bound to take certain precautions and deal with terror suspects as they see fit, wouldn't you say?
Yes, but there's also a structure called the international law, and all states are bound by it, particularly if they're signatories to it, which the U.S. is. So the United States, which has signed torture conventions, has signed the Geneva Conventions, but is trying to work outside of them by calling torture enhanced interrogation, and by calling their prisoners of war enemy combatants, is trying to create a completely new structure, which in some parts it has succeeded in doing over the past 11 years, simply because almost the rest of the world, the so-called international community, is quite happy to play along. But that doesn't mean that the United States or anybody else is above the law.
86 detainees have been cleared for release from Guantanamo, but they remain at the facility. Why is that? What are the legal grounds for their release, and where are they supposed to go from there?
Well, the United States government, part of the signing of the NDAA 2013 was that they couldn't be released to the United States mainland, and that's been quite a big issue over the past so many years of where to send the prisoners. The problem is that once you've been held at Guantanamo Bay, you're tarnished with the brush of being involved in terrorism activity. So whether or not you have been, and in the vast majority of cases they haven't been, if they are returned to their original country, the chances are that they will be then sent to jail, face further torture and abuse. To give an example, there's a man called Ahmed Belbasha, who is an Algerian national. He's been in Guantanamo Bay for the last 11 years. He was cleared for release in 2007. That was in February. So almost 6 years ago, he's been free to leave Guantanamo Bay. He cannot go back to Algeria because the evidence that the United States used to hold him initially in Guantanamo Bay was unaccepted as lawful by the Algerian government. They used that evidence in a trial against him in 2009 and convicted him for 20 years in absentia for membership of a banned terrorist organization abroad. The United States has since said he was involved in absolutely nothing, but he cannot go back to Algeria because he will face further persecution. He used to live in the United Kingdom, where he tried to claim asylum in the 1990s when there was a civil war going on in Algeria. So he fled the country in the first place because of the threat of persecution that he faced. And the United Kingdom is refusing to take him back. And he's one of the people that our campaign, the London Guantanamo campaign, is campaigning for their release.
So would you say that the reason behind other countries refusing to take on detainees from Guantanamo and the U.S. refusing to take them in within the U.S. is the fact that they're taking precaution? I mean, once you've been there, there's almost kind of a label as for you as a person that you've been to Gitmo, so no one wants you. How can they solve that? How can they solve that problem?
Well, it comes back again to very basic legal principles that you're innocent until proven guilty. And whether or not you've been held at Guantanamo Bay, there's no real exception to that rule anywhere. It's not true to say that nobody wants these people back. Half of those 86 people who are cleared from release come from Yemen. The Yemeni government would like them back. However, in 2010, President Obama placed a moratorium on the return of prisoners to Yemen, and so they haven't been able to return. And one of the examples of the despair faced by the Yemeni Yemeni prisoners was a series of poems and letters written by Farhan Adnan Abdul Latif, who was a Yemeni prisoner who died at Guantanamo Bay in suspicious circumstances in September last year.
Washington often lectures other countries about civil liberties and democracy. So how credible does the U.S. stance look when indefinite detention and Gitmo remain prevalent?
Well, the problem is, it's not just Washington's problem, it's the problem of the international community. It's the problem of the countries that facilitated the journeys and the travel of these men to Guantanamo Bay in the first place. Not everybody was in Afghanistan or Pakistan or fighting the Americans at all. It's also the countries that are not taking back their own nationals. For example, there's 2 Kuwaitis still in Guantanamo Bay, even though the rest have been released. There's Shakar Ahmer, the last British resident in Guantanamo Bay, who the British government continues to say, we are trying to get him released to this country. He has a family here, 4 children, the youngest of whom he's never met, but he hasn't after 11 years, and we haven't been given credible reasons for why he hasn't been returned. So the United States doesn't seem to have a very credible position, but unfortunately it's not just the United States that has failed on this issue, it's the whole international community through their collusion in continuing to keep Guantanamo Bay open. And on top of that, they've actually exported mini Guantanamos. This regime of indefinite detention has actually been exported to other countries, and they use it. Not quite the orange jumpsuits and not quite the American military guards. I don't think they can quite export that, but countries have actually created their own little mini Guantanamos as well.
As an activist, what do you want to see happen?
Well, President Obama, one of the first things he did when he was first elected president back in 2009, he signed a presidential decree to say that Guantanamo Bay would be closed by January 2010. What we would like to see happen, and as with other activists around the world, we know that there's also we're organising protests in London, there'll be protests in the United States and in Australia tomorrow, just those are the ones we know of. We would like President Obama to take the opportunity that he will be given by his second term as president, which will start just over a week after this anniversary tomorrow, to actually just do something constructive, close Guantanamo Bay down, and actually ensure that all of the men are released to countries where they will be safe and where they will not face further persecution. Unfortunately, in a number of cases, including men who have been released to European states, they have faced further persecution, and that shouldn't be the case when in fact they were innocent. What we're looking for is justice, and we're looking for the safe release of all of the 166 prisoners who remain there.
Live from London, there was activist Aisha Maniar. Thank you very much for joining us here on our team.